do you need?
Well, there's a story in Bloomberg today that 73% of the eligible payrolls are being covered in Nebraska. That number in New York is 20%. And now we're told the small business loan program's out of money. So you tell me why 75% of the eligible payrolls are being lifted in red states when the number is 20% in a blue state like New York, which is the epicenter of the epidemic, where we have far greater economic dislocation. There needs to be much better equity in the way these federal programs are being administered. I mean, God bless people like Andrew Cuomo for their handling of this. God bless Nydia Velázquez for designing a program that's going to save tens of millions of small businesses. But New York needs to get the help we deserve right now.
Is it weird to you that the president is so out in his disdain for New York, live tweeting Governor Cuomo's press conferences, almost chest thumping about the red states being able to open because they don't have as many cases, as though they did something differently or better than we did, other than being densely populated?
Yeah, look, it's probably, what we should expect from this president. I'd really rather focus on what is going to matter right now to New York. And as long as we can get the equipment we need, as long as we can protect our first responders, as long as we can keep the hospital capacity where it needs to be, and we can get the testing where it needs to be to get the economy going again, then we will be able to join with the president in this desire to reopen, because it'll be rooted in a program that's going to work, that's evidence-based. And that is the point. I mean, the president wants to kiss the soldier in Times Square, but you got to win the war first. And winning the war means putting down this virus, and we can do it, but we need the testing, and we need that done through the Defense Production Act and all the other centralized elements of presidential control, the authorities the Congress has given him, the resources we have allocated for this. He needs to use it. And in New York, there's no substitute for that, even with the great state leadership we've had here.
It's so interesting. As you're talking, I worked in the White House on 9/11, and after 9/11, there were disproportionate threats to the state of New York. So the city and state of New York got disproportionate security resources. And I wonder if you find it curious that model seems to be abandoned for this crisis, when a health pandemic represents, in many ways, an even graver threat to all Americans. A germ can travel more seamlessly than any sort of terror threat, it would appear.
There are a lot of reasons to be proud to be a New Yorker. One of them is that we send billions of dollars more to Washington than we get back every year. We literally underwrite a lot of the social service safety net in those red states that are always running us down. When there are tornadoes or hurricanes or floods in other parts of the country, the New York delegation steps up immediately and votes for disaster assistance to those Republican red areas of the country. We don't care about that. We help our neighbors. When I got elected to Congress in 2013, we waited 75 days for the Republican-controlled House to do what it should do on the Sandy disaster relief for New York. Yeah. We waited years for the Zadroga relief for those 9/11 heroes who worked on the pile. This is an old story where they think they can treat us like dirt, but then rely on us to lift the rest of the economy. Look, New Yorkers are tough. But we should remember what's going down. And this is on the list of reasons why we need change at the top in this country.
Let me ask you this. I mean, you've been tweeting about testing, and it would seem that if Donald Trump's goal is to flip a switch, as he said, and get the economy back up, there's no way around that. There's only one way through it. I mean, what do you make of his complete abdication of any responsibility for testing?
Yeah, there is no way out but through. And the tougher we make it right now, the shorter the duration of this economic crisis will be. And the entire relief package, the entire stimulus plan is a bridge. It is designed to cover everything for the period of time we need to. But how long that takes is critical to whether it will work. And so shortening the period of the economic crisis by defeating the public health emergency is the key to all of this stuff working, to keeping all these small businesses running, all these families afloat that have lost a paycheck. So it is intricately linked. You've got to do the hard thing now, put down this epidemic, and then we can re-jump this economy. And I am sympathetic to the president's desire to say we're a restless, energetic, productive nation. We want to get back to work. I do too. but let's win the war first, and then we'll come roaring back.
Do you worry that on the political side of this part of the debate, the president is seizing this ground of being for what you just said, that we're restless? Every single person wants to get back to work, but we don't want to become the country that jeopardizes the lives of every person over 60 or every person with a pre-existing condition. Do you worry that the sort of political messaging, the mainlining of disinformation on conservative media has sort of seized the mantle of one side is for getting the economy back on? And I think it was Bill Barr that said the other side wants to hide under their beds.
Yeah, I think that's what the president is doing. I think he's trying to be the guy who can tell you what you want to hear. And we're supposed to be some sort of nanny state bureaucrat saying, oh, no, not yet. We've got to keep the recession going, as though we support that. But this is not really working when you look at the numbers among Republicans who say the president's mishandling the crisis.
Right.
80% of the country says we're not ready to reopen. People are seeing it with their own eyes. So I do think the president's nonsense on this is falling on a tougher audience than normal. But I think that's exactly what he's trying to do. He's trying to set up this dynamic that he's somehow, charging ahead while we're dragging our feet. But of course, it is that nonsense. It is that substituting arrogance or flippancy for competence that got us here in the first place. And the death toll in New York, and this is going to sound tough, but it's the truth. The death toll in New York is a function of the president's delay and happy talk and arrogance early on in this crisis. And we don't want to prolong the crisis and defeat the economic recovery efforts because we have prolonged it too long to lift at the federal level by opening too soon. Putting down the pandemic allows us to restart the economy sooner. That's the point.
Let me ask you, because you raised the Intel picture, and you're on the Intel committee. We've had lots of conversations about your work on that committee. The pandemic was something known to the intelligence community. It was something known based on emails printed and published in the New York Times and by the scientists at more than a handful of the president's own cabinet agencies. What does the after action, and I know this having worked in the White House on 9/11 and with WMD and 9/11, there will be an after, the truth will emerge. What do you think that picture, just as someone who sort of sees the raw intel, what does that picture start to look like to you?
Well, I'll tell you, I do serve on the Intel committee. I can't get into the classified information that was presented to us. But what I can tell you is that if you were reading the New York Times, you would have known what you needed to know about the preparations that had to get done in this country and the aggressiveness with which we needed to treat the first cases, to do testing, to do contact tracing, to do containment, the way the Obama administration did during the Ebola crisis. And had the administration done the response right, then we wouldn't be saying, gee, why did you ignore the warnings? The fact is that we had several months lead time on this. And I don't think anybody reading the intelligence would have built in the assumption that we would have been incompetent in our response, that we would have happy talked it, ignored the experts, pretended it was going to go away magically. And it is the reality of exponential viral spread that when you do that, you buy yourself a huge problem when it could have been a manageable one. So I actually agree there's got to be a bipartisan after action, let the chips fall where they may, commission on this. And wherever the blame should lie, it should lie. I'm not afraid of the truth. But I have to say, the real story here, the real story is the wasted weeks when we could have contained this thing. And the death toll in New York and other places is a direct result of that.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.